of land animals on Earth. Lyle was actually studying the diversity of land forms, and he came to the idea of uniformitarianism, which is that the mechanisms currently operating have always been at work in shaping the Earth. And he came to this by his world travels. And Wallace was almost the same as Lyle, but he studied species and their environment. And he published the book, The Geographical Observation of Animals, and it was just a collection of maps about where certain animals lived and certain geographic forms. And he had the same exact ideas as Darwin about species adapting to their environment, but the only difference was that Darwin's book was published earlier than Wallace's, and that's the only thing that stopped us from quoting Wallace instead of Darwin when we talk about natural selection. And it was the same ideas without ever collaborating. Did everyone get that? Still recording? Yeah.
You're done?
I'm done.
Economics who thought that life produces more offspring than can survive. That's what he did. Economics who thought that life produces more offspring than can survive. And then he suggested that growth is limited by supply of resources. And then for organism survival, if there's not enough supply, the population will decrease significantly. Obviously, because they'll fight for food, starve, some will starve to death, stuff like that.
Okay, so how is it different from Lamarck's explanation? Well, Lamarck, he believed that the giraffes over time
And then
like to stretch. Like he believed that there was one ancestor.
Lamarck
and then it just gets longer and longer.
thought that they would acquire traits from their parents. So, for example, if their parents were really strong, then the offspring would be really strong muscles and stuff like that. Oh. Would acquire traits from that their parents had. And then, how did he suggest change occurred? Pretty much over generations. That they tried to reach for food and their necks stretched and got longer.
Acquired traits.
Acquired traits from their parents. Acquired traits from their parents.
Oh, of course.
And then finally for the last one, how they acquired long necks is pretty much the same thing. They stretched and their necks got longer and they adapted to their environment and acquired.
No. Okay, so this is questions 1 and 4 for Darwin. And so Darwin's theory was that today's organisms descended from ancestral species.
You need an S on species.
What?
You need an S on species.
Doesn't matter what species. All organisms descend from a species. It's really entertaining.
So Wallace is actually like Lyle in that geography had a huge part of his work, but his observations were about leading animals to adapt to their environment, and that was the basis of all.
Okay, you guys got that?
And he published Geographical.
And then his name of the book, which kind of covers his other theory, is The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. So, The Origin of Species. No, it's still number 1. Still number 1. The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection.
Lucas is in tag.
There you go.
I'm serious in elementary school.
What did you say his book was?
They just made a bunch of
What?
We done?
I have one more thing, but not really. I'm kind of done. Okay, and then this is the last thing, the difference between their theories. So Lamar was another guy. He thought that an animal would change over their lifetime, and then all the traits that they acquired during their lifetime, they would pass on to their children. And Darwin thought that they didn't acquire traits during their lifetime, like they could get new things like exercise, they get stronger, but instead natural selection did it, and so that caused evolution. Now I'm done.
Are overpopulation of offspring, and basically what that means is that animals have more babies than will survive. That's not necessarily true of humans, but like rabbits have like 5 billion babies, and only a few and only a few survive, and those are the few with the best traits. And so that's because of natural selection, the ones that are most fit for the environment survive. So they have a bunch of babies with random traits, and only the best survive. The second one is variation in traits, and that's just through genetic recombination, mutations, crossing over, meiosis, different ways that the genes of an organism can be messed up. The third is heredity, which is just the passing down of the genes to the offspring from the parents. The fourth is environment, which is the environment being hostile to some groups, better fit for some traits than others. And then the fifth is competition, which is the idea that there's a limited number of resources in the world and only the best will get to the top of the pile and only the best will survive. So animals have to compete with each other for limited resources. So natural selection explains that individuals with traits best fit for an environment become more common in the populace because they're able to survive, reproduce, and pass on their genes. So individuals with traits best fit for an environment become more common in the populace because they are able to survive, reproduce, and pass on their genes.